All right, part 3. This is the procedural material part of the tutorial. It's going to be relatively hefty, I guess. If you're comfortable with procedural materials, this will be fun. If you're not comfortable with them, this will be pretty educational. You're going to learn some really cool things here. And it's not super crazy concept. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call this material letters, and I'm just going to delete it right now. We're going to add a new material and call it fingerprints. And then we're going to click on this guy and apply the same material to it. I'm going to hide the floor because it's just too bright. And let's create those fingerprints. So what I'm going to do is just pick a color. We'll make it a nice blue. And what I'm going to do is hit Shift-A. We're going to get in a color ramp. And then we're going to go ahead and get a Voronoi. Voronoi texture, hit Control-T with the Node Wrangler. You're going to use the object coordinate, plug distance into color, and then I'm going to hit Control-Shift-Click, left click so we can see the material. Again, make sure you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. It comes with Blender by default. Just go to Edit. Sorry, here we go, Edit, Add-ons, Node Wrangler. That's going to allow you to see all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is flip the color ramp, and we're going to bring it in. And here's our fingerprints, but we actually want them to be the size of kind of a regular finger, maybe a small finger, but this is going to be our fingerprints, and then we're going to bring it in. But I don't want any of them touching, which means now they're going to be bigger. And so, hey, we're kind of limited. I don't want them touching, but also there's not a whole lot of them, and I want more. So here's how you would do that. I'm going to hit... go here, I'm highlight these, Control-Shift-D, so it's going to stay connected to the mapping. We're going to get in a mix color and plug color to here. And then we're going to go 3D to 4D, and actually we're going to make both of them 4D, and watch what happens. Now we can move around more, just like this. So we have control. See how some are staying in place? That's the other texture. So now we can move around more. It's like, hey, I want a lot more fingerprints. Well, you can get a lot more fingerprints. I'm going to go ahead and move this over. Take this whole system here, Control-Shift-D, move it down. And then I'm going to hit Shift-D on this mix color and then plug him here. So now we have this whole crazy system. And then now you can bring more around, bring more around. And so now you have basically 4 control points for fingerprints. This one, this one, this one, and this one to randomize the position. And then you can also maybe make some bigger. But now we are full of fingerprints that aren't, I mean, some of them are touching, but I didn't like the way it touched like that, where they smudged into each other. That's not realistic. If they're going to touch, they're going to overlap. And that's why I did this. So now that we are here, we have this whole system. I'm going to plug this back in. So now we have this. What we need to do is now distort all of these with a noise texture. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-Shift-Click so that we can just see the black and whites. And we're going to get a noise texture right here. Noise texture, we're going to get a mix color. And then plug that here. So now we're basically adding some distortion to them like this. There's also another way to do it to change the way that this behaves. And that is so I'm going to hold down Shift and right click. That connects all of these. We actually put the noise texture here. And instead of adding like the noise texture-y looking mess, we'll plug that into color B. It actually is going to warp them. See how it warps them, kind of? I don't know. It looks the same, actually. We can forget it. But now they're a little noisy. Something like this. Cool. So now we have our fingerprints, and now we're going to combine all of this into an interesting look. So we're going to get another color ramp. This is kind of master control over everything that we're doing. So we're going to bring this in to be more of a solid these as solid fingerprints, or fingerprint smudges really. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to get another mix color, and we're going to use these fingerprints as a mask for the noise texture that we're going to add next. So we're going to get a color ramp. Let's get a noise texture, and then hit Control T on the noise texture, and then I'm going to hit G and move them all the way back. Use the object coordinate. Plug color here, and then we're going to plug the color ramp into A. And then I'm actually just going to focus on, so bring the factor over to the left. Let's just focus on this really quick. Let's bring this in here, bring this in here, bring your detail to 12, bring your roughness up, something like this. And then what you can do now is hit Shift D on this color ramp, give it a noise texture here, and then plug that into slot B, and then plug in the fingerprints into here. Watch how this kind of works. So we'll play with the color ramp. This is the fingerprints, right? So you can bring them all the way in. In my case, we can bring them like, that's how they're really going to look. So fingerprints, you can actually add noise to the fingerprints, and then this guy, you can do that. So now we have this, but we're really only going to know how good it looks once we plug it into the roughness, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm just going to hit Control and slice that. We're going to plug this guy back into surface and plug this into roughness, and then we'll get another master control color ramp, plug that right into here. Okay, so this is the fingerprint material. See how it's super shiny in some spots? We're going to go ahead and fix that by doing this. But I do want it a little bit shiny, so something like this. And now we have this fingerprint material. See how we have those fingerprints all over? It looks awesome. We can play with the, I'm going to play with the world rotation, just kind of get a feel for this material. And then we can play with some other HDRIs. I'm going to do this guy. So there's our fingerprints, and if you want to play with kind of the roughness of all of them, again, you can make the fingerprints less established, more established. All of that, you have full control. I'm actually going to add this as a material in real-time materials for those of you who want to use it that way. See how you have detail here and no detail here? You can kind of introduce that with this color ramp and then kind of bring it in like this, playing with the way that those fingerprints look. But that is the fingerprint material on our plastic. All right, that was a lot of work on this guy. We're going to keep it very simple and just make it metallic. Maybe bring the roughness down and then make it, where is it at? That guy. So it looks really cool. Now on this rope, I don't know how to make rope. So what you could do is here in real-time materials, you can use actually where are we at? The cloth materials here, and say like pull this guy in and apply that to the rope. And now you have this kind of weave cloth, but of course, I'm not going to assume you have real-time materials. So if you want a free kind of fabric material that works really well, we're going to use one of these. So I'm going to actually pull, I haven't used it yet, but I want to. So I'm going to use this guy. I used a different one, but just pick one of the fabric materials. I'm going to go ahead and choose this guy, and then we're going to go ahead and get the 4K PNG. All right, so now that you've had that downloaded, I'm going to click New on this. I'm going to hit Control T. So we're going to be using those UVs, and let's go ahead and get that material. So here's that fabric. I'm going to go ahead and select the color. So that looks really cool. I'm going to go ahead and maybe scale it up to 2, and then we're going to manipulate the color. So I'm going to hit G. We're going to get a color ramp because we don't like those colors. We're going to go ahead and just pick this blue. So I'm going to hover over here, hit Control C, go back over here, and hit the period key. Control V. And then you can bring these in. Of course, it's going to goof with it a little bit. And so you can play with those colors there, like so. So now we have a blue chord. That's transparency, by the way. if you want to use that, and then you can get a smaller chord in the middle, which is super cool. So we can get that other path and make it smaller in the geometry. So if we go here to ghost mode, or like this, here we go, like that, then we can access the transparency of this new material, which is super cool. So I'm going to use cycles just to view this. So let's go ahead and continue working on this material. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-D, click on 2, and then we're going to get in the displacement. We're going to get a bump node. This isn't totally the normal way to do it, but it does really work well. And then you can play like that. And so now we have it looking like it's coming out, which is really cool. And then you can play with the alpha. I believe it's the alpha. We're going to do it together. So the opacity. Okay, so there's the alpha working. So now we can see our chord underneath. That's the first time I've actually used the alpha in a material like this. I typically just don't have this scenario. And then we can make the material on the path below it, just make it black, like that, but it's still going to have some fun. Or we can make it metallic. We can just pull from that material. You never know. Or you can get real detailed, like put multiple chords, like it's actually a real computer chord. Lots of fun options here. And then the last thing we need is the roughness. Control-Shift-D. We're going to get our roughness here, non-color, and plug that into roughness. All right, cool. We have our chord finished. Last thing is to incorporate our letters, which is why I saved it for last. So what we're going to do is right over here, click on the letters material, and then I'm going to go hover over here and pull this color. And then right here on the white one, paste that color there. Make this, make the letters white. And then here, let's copy this entire roughness. I'm gonna hit Control-C, Control-V, I'm gonna hit G, and plug that into both principles. So plug that into roughness here and roughness. So we now have our fingerprints back, but it's working with the letters, and you can all, of course, change the letters to whatever color you want. I like it at white. It's nice and tasteful, I think. All right, let's go ahead and create the floor material next. So I'm going to click on a plane. I'm going to scale it up to meet the edge of our wires here, or really like that. Control-A and apply that scale. I'm going to hit Tab-U and unwrap. And for this board material, I guess you could, but I didn't want to because I want to have numbers down the side. I created a mask for that cross checkered, like cutting board type material. That's the only non-procedural material we're making here, well, I guess along with the letters. So what I'm going to do is that is attached on Patreon as an image. Go ahead and download that image here on Patreon. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go here to the shading tab. And we're going to click new. I'm going to get a mix shader. Hit Shift-D and get another one, and then make one black. Hit Control-T on the mix shader. And then I'm going to open up that checkerboard, which is going to be this one for me. It's going to be titled something else for you guys, a little more understandable. And then I'm going to go ahead and get an invert color like that. And we are almost there. So this white material, we're going to get a really cool texture going. So I'm going to switch over to a different HDRI so that we could see the texture we're actually building. So let's just zoom into the white. Let's get a bump node. We're going to get a bump, plug it into the normal. Let's get in a color ramp, plug that into the height, and we're going to get a Voronoi, Musgrave. Control-T on that whole thing. We're at 15 minutes just on the material. All right, so we're going to get this guy here, but that is too much. So we're going to bring that scale up pretty significantly. So now we have this. Now we have all this really cool detail. And then I'm going to bring it in something like this. but I want it to have more detail. So we're going to do the same thing we did on the other one. We're going to get a noise texture. We're going to get a mix shader. Sorry. Mix color. Plug that into the B, the object plug into the B. Go to 12 and then play with your factor till it looks something like this. And then a really cool effect is if we go from linear to B-spline, you can bring it in so it looks like it's sinking. So here's how it looks, like a really hard edge. If you bring the B-spline in, it kind of fades right out of the board. And now you have this really nice looking material on this whole thing. So now if we look at it, we have this really nice texture that you really almost looks like you can feel it depending on the angle and the detail and all that. So this is the shading portion of the tutorial. And now we'll move on into lighting, rendering it, and finishing it up.